Welcome to the Mama Mudra podcast. I'm Kate Thompson-Duwe, and I believe that the wellness industry has a joy problem, so we're aiming to fix it. This podcast is where we bring in experts to challenge beliefs and tools to feel good, stay consistent, and build a life that works. Because in this community, joy is the new performance metric. Welcome back. Today's episode is about the link between wellness and joy, which we always speak about, being the nervous system. So I usually don't talk about a headline or theme for the episode, but I thought it was very relevant today because our guest that we have in studio is Kylie Brons. Welcome, Kylie.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Kylie is a breathwork expert. She has studied the Wim Hof Method, and she is an incredibly experienced and compassionate breathwork practitioner. And I thought that it was a very interesting discussion to have because in today's world, we have so many things that we can use for biohacking and wellness optimization and all of these tricks and tools. And most of us do so many of them, and it's amazing, and I'm all for them. But a lot of the time, we actually neglect one of the most obvious tools in our arsenal, and that is breath. It's something that we do all day, every day. We do all night. We do it without thinking. We do it, it's just part of being alive. But a lot of us have never actually been taught how to use our breath intentionally. And it's something that I have relatively recently discovered. So I've always been involved and obviously used breath work through yoga, which I've done for over 20 years. But until starting to do things like sauna journeys at One Flow and have you at Sunshine People and do really intentional deep breath work workshops, have I understood the power of using your breath intentionally. It can not only calm you down, I think most people think about it in terms of controlling anxiety, but it can energize you. It can bring out emotion. It can do a million different things if you know how to use it. So I'm really looking forward to people listening and watching, understanding a little bit more about how powerful the breath can be. So let's start right at the beginning of your journey with breath. How did you get into working with breath, and what did that look like at the beginning?
Well, first of all, I had this insane desire always to upgrade the quality of life. I'm born that way. I've always looked for the beauty in every little moment, always wanted to upgrade every single second of my life. And from there, I started studying everything under the sun to do with wellness. So in Dutch we say, I'm Dutch. It's a little bit of a hobby gotten out of hand. I studied anything from automolecular epigenetic medicine to yoga, different styles of yoga, tantra, integrative nutrition, holistic health,
amazing,
contrast therapy, the Wim Hof Method. Well, I can keep going, but
amazing. I didn't know any of that. Okay.
But here's the thing: the main thread to it all, the main thing that kept coming back in each of these different modalities was the breath and the nervous system. And this is what we are touching base upon today. So this is one of the ways that it kept coming back into my life. I'm also incredibly sensitive. So the breath has really helped me to learn to anchor myself within my body and to not run away or get out of my body in terms of stress or anxiety or fear. Also, I'm like you, a huge fan of One Flow, and also I train people there. And when you are using the breath within workouts, it really changes your energy levels, and it really is where resilience is born.
So for someone that hasn't experienced breathwork before, because again, like I said in the intro, I mean, it's, when you talk to someone about breathwork, of course, I know breathwork, I breathe every day, but it's it's so, and I remember it being one of the first things that I learned in one of my very first ever yoga teacher trainings that I did, is deep belly breathing. And, you really, the vast majority of people are walking around breathing to here and not going anywhere down into their belly. And it makes such a difference, but it is so intentional. It's not something that you just will do without thinking, that, you know, like while you're walking around in your day. So for someone that has never experienced breathwork, guided breathwork or intentional breathwork before, firstly, how do you sort of explain it to them? And I'm not talking about in a workshop scenario. I'm talking about like if you want them to start using their breath more intentionally on a daily basis. So firstly, how do you kind of explain that to them? And then physiologically, what is actually starting to happen when you do start intentionally using your breath as a tool for wellness?
Well, it depends a little bit what kind of breath work we are referring to, because faster, more ventilation basically causes more alertness, more energy, right? Whereas deep belly breathing, as you just said, calms down our nervous system. So before I got here, I was a little bit tired, so I did a bit of rapid breathing, but I also did some slowing down of my breath. And really, as you inhale, I always say to people, blowing the belly up like a balloon as you inhale. And what is so incredibly funny is that people find that incredibly difficult because they want to pull their belly in, whereas you need to give your organ space to move down so that your lungs can actually expand, right? And if you look at babies, and if they are sleeping, the way they breathe, it's in their belly. And slow belly breathing basically activates your vagus nerve, which is the main trigger, the main highway to your parasympathetic nervous system. And I will go there just now. So you have multiple ways and multiple layers and multiple doors to unlock with the breath. And this is what makes it so incredibly powerful, because it can do so incredibly much, right? Now, if you look at what is happening in the nervous system, I think it's important that we discuss a little bit the nervous system. So you have your central part of your nervous system, which consists of your brain and your spinal cord. And then you have your peripheral nervous system, which is somatic, so movement, everything I can do consciously, right? And autonomic. And autonomic is anything that goes automatically, which means your heart rate, which means breathing. Because if we forget to breathe, thank goodness, we are still breathing, right? However, we obviously do that on autopilot. So this is the system that works for us on autopilot. Now, our autonomic nervous system, to keep it simple, I'm going to divide it in two. There is a little third part of it, but I'm going to focus on the two to keep it a little bit simple. So we have sympathetic and parasympathetic. Okay, let me do this. Parasympathetic, sympathetic. Sympathetic is your gas pedal outside of your cave. We're in Africa. There's a lion. Danger, pupils widen, adrenaline up, heart rate up, vasoconstriction, all of that stuff. Parasympathetic side of the nervous system is inside of your cave, rest, digest, and heal. Saliva up. This is also why it's so incredibly important to be relaxed when we eat. Because this is where we digest. Because obviously when we are fighting or flighting, we don't need to have our digestive system working for us, right? So this is the differentiation in the nervous system. Now, the breath is the gateway or the remote control to regulating our nervous system, our autonomic nervous system. And it was previously believed by science that we cannot influence our autonomic nervous system because it goes automatically. However, deep breath is the one way that we can influence our autonomic nervous system. And this is where the breath becomes so incredibly powerful, because this is where we can really change our entire biochemistry. So it has an effect on our nervous system, but this means that we can also regulate in dysregulation by using the breath. For example, if we're sitting in an ice bath, right? And in that way, we're learning to be comfortable in an uncomfortable situation.
Trying to be comfortable.
Trying to be. So training our bodies. And we're also, by consciously also choosing to change our breath, whether that is to activate or to regulate or dysregulate, we are literally training our nervous system to become more flexible between switching from sympathetic, so stress, to parasympathetic, relaxation.
So do you think that most people walking around today are breathing wrong? Because I know even with my children, and they're much younger, teens, the two oldest, when if I talk to them about stress and trying to calm down in stressful situations, exam writing, things like that, my go-to is always belly breathing, just like take deep breaths in and feel it all the way down. And and it's quite foreign to them even at their young age. And it kind of makes me think that there are probably the vast majority of people walking around that if they've never consciously thought about how to breathe, everyone is doing that shallow, just to the bottom of their lungs, breathing, not even probably the first half of their lungs, breathing in and out. And that's actually not really giving the full benefit of what breath should be giving. So do you usually find when you meet people for breathwork sessions that haven't done them before, that you're almost training them how to breathe correctly?
Yes.
Okay, I would have thought so.
However, in daily life, because we live in such a chronically stressed society that we so beautifully develop, which is incredibly interesting, but also not always healthy for our system, it is sometimes very easy to forget because it goes automatically. So it is literally retraining our body, retraining our brain, creating new pathways in our brain to remind ourselves to breathe better. Now here's why is it also so important, because here's the bridge between why the nervous system is so important when it comes to wellness and what that means for joy. Because if you have a dysregulated nervous system, it is incredibly difficult for you to feel presence within your body, to feel pleasure in your body. You need regulation to enjoy, to create joy, to experience joy. Because if you're constantly in fight or flight, that is not a priority. In fight or flight, survival is the priority. So all the hormones, all the systems will gear up to protect our bodies. Because essentially what the role of our nervous system is to keep us safe. So it is constantly scanning if we are safe. If I didn't feel connected with you or didn't feel safe in this environment, my nervous system would also gear up. And this is that moment that I can say, okay, let's do a little bit of belly breathing. Obviously, in certain situations, considering now, say I do the Wim Hof Method breathing technique, I have done that quite a few times. I do that when I'm in an Uber, for example, to one flow before I teach. And I've had quite a few times that the Uber driver was wondering if I was hyperventilating, if I was having a seizure, or if something was going on.
I thought you were going to say he started doing it with you.
No. That hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
I've had any other scenario, but it was a few times I literally stop on the car and turning around like, are you okay?
Right.
So now I tend to warn them in advance. So I just want to repeat, breathing is the gateway to regulating our nervous system, and it holds the key that unlocks the door to joy, because we need a regulated nervous system to experience joy. And I think that's very important.
I agree. And you can clearly see that Kylie's been very well trained by teaching at Sunshine People events to bring joy into the messaging, which I appreciate. So speaking about the Wim Hof Method, it's obviously globally recognized. Everyone knows about it. It's, had been in the spotlight for many, many years. But what do you think the thing is that people don't really understand about it? What is, sort of the misconception? And also, what do you think the most, the biggest power is in it? Because you've been doing it for quite a while, and I've done it with you before, sauna journeys and cold plunges and things like that, and it really does make quite a tangible difference. You feel it, so I can only imagine someone that's been doing it for as long as you have, and obviously does it at a sort of that, sort of more effective level, the difference that it must make for you in your body.
So which one do you want to start with?
So what do you think that people misunderstand about it?
About the Wim Hof Method itself. Well, the Wim Hof Method itself consists of three things, right? Which is mindset focus, which is one pillar, breathwork, and gradual important cold exposure.
Okay.
So not diving into an ice whack for 40 minutes.
Okay,
Longer is not necessarily better. That is one of the misconceptions.
Okay.
Now, what is incredibly important to understand, and what is often completely missed when it comes to the power of this method, or misunderstood, is that we are consciously choosing to face adverse hormetic stresses,
Yes.
such as heat, cold, breath holds, but also over breathing, ventilating, right? And our bodies are still quite similar to those of cavemen, inherently lazy. We are built to preserve energy in case we have a moment of lack, when it comes to food, when it comes to oxygen, when it comes to warmth, anything.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So they are inherently lazy. Now, if it works like a muscle, if you don't use it, you lose it. If you never pick up something heavy, it becomes incredibly difficult to lift something heavy, right? So if you don't use it, you lose it. So by consciously choosing to face adverse hormetic stresses, now it's important to understand that I'm not talking about chronic, low-grade chronic stress, which we're all exposed to in this society, because that is actually unhealthy and that causes inflammation. Short-term hormetic stress is actually like a software update for the body.
Okay.
A short-term dysregulation, a short-term adversity actually resets your entire system.
So like a cold plunge.
Exactly.
Okay.
And by taking the body through the full spectrum of extremities of what it's capable of, afterwards the body optimizes. So whether that is a breath hold, whether that is a cold plunge, by training the body, you train it like a muscle.
Yes.
And you also train by doing this, you're training the nervous system, and especially by the breath work, to become more flexible between switching from stress to relaxation. And this comes incredibly, this is incredibly handy in our daily life, right? Because we often linger within that stressy feeling, which is where it becomes unhealthy. So the breath work, for example, takes you to the full spectrum. It calms down, it takes you from sympathetic, so the ventilation part, to parasympathetic. And it does so much more. It also trains your circulatory system, which is, for example, your mode of transport in your body. The highways responsible for transporting oxygen, nutrients, hormones, and waste products to wherever they need to go in the body. Now, so it's about facing extremities and about facing adverse hormetic stresses, and from there learning to regulate our system by using the breath. So it's not just relaxation, it's not just stress, it's basically both. And when you talk about, for example, the breath work, if you train like athletes do high up in the mountains, when there's suddenly a low level of oxygen in the air, right? And they're training, and when they come back down to sea level and they compete against athletes who haven't been training on elevation, they have a benefit because their bodies are now used to become more, or trained to become more energy and oxygen efficient. And there's also something that has to be said about breathing, and especially when you're working out, or when you especially do classes at One Flow with Janae. Today, this one is for you. You need oxygen. Well, okay, let's start from the beginning. You have a cell, and your cell, if I'm correct, has about 24 cell organs, so-called organelles. Now, one of these organs is called the mitochondria. And this is the energy factory of our cell, right? This is where we produce energy. Now, I'm going to not go into the whole chemical process of this. I love this. I'm a nerd, so I can. But then we need 2 days maybe, or another 2 hours. But you need oxygen to be present within the cell to create the optimum amount of ATP, which is a universal energy carrier within our bodies. So you need oxygen to create the optimum amount of energy, simply said. So there's so much to be said about what we're doing with this method. And I can go for hours and hours because we haven't even discussed happy hormones. We haven't discussed the immune system, which is something that is very interesting because by consciously choosing to activate or create a release of adrenaline in the body, this creates a less, this dampens the inflammatory response of the immune system.
Wow.
And this is where it becomes very interesting also immune-wise, and this is why people with autoimmune diseases benefit so greatly from this method. Yeah, so there's so much to say about it.
It's so interesting.
It's always
so much more than
very difficult to choose an answer.
Yes,
because I can choose so many different options. Yeah.
So of the people that you've worked with since you started on this journey, which I'm sure is in the hundreds, what is the most common ailment, if you will, not necessarily in terms of disease, but like what is the most common thing that people are struggling with? Is it anxiety? Is it, something sort of quite commonplace that breathwork has really been able to help them with on a relatively quick turnaround once they've learned the method?
A lot of people are struggling with anxiety and a lot of people are struggling with depression, of which both we can tap into with breathwork.
Yeah.
And simply said, if we breathe deeply into the belly, as I said before, it stimulates the vagus nerve, which basically essentially tells your brain that you are safe.
Yeah.
And the reason being is that it will tell your body that there's enough oxygen and there's that CO2 levels are a little bit low. Because when it comes to why you get a breathing stimulus, what is interesting for you to understand is that it doesn't come from, in the first place, it doesn't come from a lack of oxygen. The breathing stimulus is caused by a rising level of CO2 in the blood.
Because do you mean when your breath gets short?
No, in any moment. So
okay.
The reason why you feel I have to breathe, or when your autonomic nervous system says I have to inhale, so the breathing stimulus, the urge to breathe, however you wanna name it, is caused by the rising levels of CO2 in your blood. The reason being is because you're chemically protected to not go into the very low levels of oxygen. So when CO2 rises, that means the body gives you a sign, or the brain gives you a sign and says, breathe in.
Yeah.
And this is where I want to swear, but I won't.
It's amazing. It really is incredible.
It's incredible.
Yeah. So one of the, as I said just now, with your media training and the fact that you mentioned joy, it's because you were obviously a part of Sunshine People, which was so incredible. And one of my favorite parts of that day was watching how emotional the breathwork session was for so many people. And I think that it's something that is not necessarily overlooked, but it's certainly not seen as like the one part of a whole program that would stand out in terms of, the impact that it has on the people that do it. People will automatically, get excited about the training component or, the cold plunge or like the big things, that are going to be high exertion, high reward. And yet the breathwork part of Sunshine People got an ovation at the end of it. Everyone was clapping, people were crying. It was incredibly emotional. And I'd love for you to talk us through kind of that experience and how, I'm sure there's an element of it being because people just hadn't done it before and didn't realize how powerful a breathwork session could be, a really like a deep breathwork session. But like, how do you think that just breathing, which is something that we should all know how to do, can evoke such strong reactions in people? And also then, as we moving into launching and planning the next Sunshine People, what do people have to look forward to with a guided breathwork session by you?
Okay, so the reason why people often get emotional is because the body keeps score. And when we think about emotions or feelings or traumas, they are stored in our body. And I'm actually getting goosebumps from it because this is where it becomes so special and so healing, the breath work that is. So what happens with breath work is that our defense mechanisms which separate our body, keeping score, from our mind, allowing us to feel these feelings, memories, or emotions, because it's protecting us.
Yeah.
They lower, they dampen, which means these defense mechanisms, they soften, and which means we tap into emotions and feelings that we thought we weren't carrying anymore, but they're essentially still there. What also happens, like there's so many things that happen. For example, you changing the chemistry of your blood, so the levels of CO2 and oxygen, and this then in turn creates a lot of effects on your nervous system, and this is where you start feeling very deeply. This is also why I always say feeling is understanding, because when you're doing this kind of breath work, you're tapping into the primary parts of your brain, and these are also connected, a little bit connected to emotion. And then if we also talk about fastening your breath, that has obviously a connection to your sympathetic nervous system, but it also has a little bit of a connection in your brain towards your amygdala.
Okay.
So there are a lot of ways as to why we start feeling so deeply, and why it can trigger a trauma response, which I've had also, which can be incredibly powerful and incredibly beautiful, because this is the way we tap into these hidden emotions, that backpack that we all walk around with. And that backpack becomes heavier and heavier and heavier, to the point that it creates inflammation and constant stress within our bodies. So it's so important. And I know it is so scary, and sometimes I also don't want to deal with it and want to run away from feeling all the heavy stuff, right? We're all human.
Yeah.
And we're just essentially wanting to protect our state of being.
Yeah.
So it's normal to feel that way. But deep emotions, or even an experience of ecstasy, like this joy that makes you cry, a feeling that you maybe haven't felt for a long time, or only felt when you were like a child. This can also make you emotional, right? And all these feel-good hormones, and the dopamine and the adrenaline and everything rushing to your body, and also that aliveness, that feeling of aliveness, and that presence within your body. So moving away from the analytical thinking into your body, into feeling what it feels like to be alive. I think that is why we get so emotional also.
It's so beautiful when you see someone experience that for the first time, you know, because there's such different breathing techniques that you will use for healing versus for performance. And, you know, you, as I said earlier, you start learning about different types of breathing through yoga. But then I've learned so many more different types through working with you, and especially in the sauna journeys and the contrast therapies and things like that, which really are, it's just, it kind of like opens up a whole world, you know, and as I said in the beginning, of something that we all just take for granted. And it's so like, it's, you know, it's breathing. We all do it, but it's so strong and so incredible when you start utilizing it effectively. So for anyone listening that maybe doesn't have the opportunity to come to a sauna journey with you, or a workshop or anything like that, but would like to start using breath intentionally, where would you suggest that they start? And I mean, we should maybe even record some little breathing exercises that we can share on socials, and you can do, you know, because there's so many different types. I mean, there's box breathing, I don't even know the names of all of them, but I just know that they're all the, you know, the ones that we do frequently at yoga. But for anyone listening that wants to start, what would be the one breathing exercise that you would suggest that they start with, that they will really feel a difference from in terms of their daily life? I know you're probably going to say it depends on what they want to achieve.
Exactly, because we have so many options as to where to go, right? What I think is incredibly powerful in our current society, because we have so much stress, is to learn to down-regulate.
Yes.
Because if you have an almost car accident, you have that moment afterwards that you're shaking because of an adrenaline dump, right? And funny enough, we don't really regulate ourselves because, if, for example, look at a dog. If they hurt themselves or are in a fight or get a fright, they shake it off. They literally shake off their stress.
Yes.
We can't do that, or we don't do that, or we don't know how to do that. So I think regulating breath is the most powerful in our current society, which simply means deeply inhaling through your nose, and as the belly moves forward, the ribs expand, the chest rises, and then audibly sighing it out.
Okay.
Lengthening, deepening your breath. If you speak about Ujjayi breathing, for example, ocean breathing, they also all have 3 names, by the way, just to make it more...
to keep it confusing.
Yeah. By contracting a little bit the back of the throat and creating that sound as if you're whispering, as if you're fogging up a mirror, that slows down your breath and it deepens your breath, which calms down your nervous system, which then in turn stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system, and which creates a regulation within your body. Now, these obviously come in handy when you want to regulate. So whether that is, for me, before doing this talk, because I was a little bit nervous, or before or after an almost car accident, or if you want to see if you can find a way to calm down before you go to bed, or if you have a big presentation or pitch that you have to do. But there's something to be said there. You have also different ways to regulate. So, for example, if we are talking about a hot yoga class where our heart rates are going up, or sauna journey, energize and expand sauna journey, especially with me, where we intentionally dysregulate, right? Where your nervous system is activated, where your heart rate goes up. This is where that slowing down the breathing comes in handy, right?
Yeah.
Slowing down our heart rate. Deepening the breath, lengthening the breath, slowing it down. Now, if you think about breathing also in terms of exercise, obviously, if you are doing weight training, strength training, you want to have that sharp exhale.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
To create energy and to also create momentum. If you want alertness,
it's more
and a little bit of adrenaline, I wouldn't say shallow, because this is also something, I don't know why that's an assumption, but what I teach when I do activating breathwork, so that is faster, especially with the Wim Hof Method, I do ask people to breathe into their belly.
Yes.
The reason being because then that
kind of
it deepens the breath. It also makes sure that the stress level is a little bit controlled.
Okay.
Because that traumatic stressor that we are trying to experience, we want that to be a stimulant. Yes. And not like an only stress kind of factor.
That's
so
like you do before a cold plunge.
There's
so
a line
fast,
that you switch.
Okay.
Yes, I do it before a cold plunge to train your nervous system, to also train your circulatory system.
Okay.
And to allow people to move to the primary parts of the brain that you need to withstand the cold.
Okay.
But I always end with a regulation of the nervous system. Yeah. Because if you go into that ice bath completely like stressed out or like a caveman and you want this like, you're here to, like I see men do that quite often. You come out of that ice bath and you're shaking. Yes. But it doesn't necessarily come from the cold always. This can also be a serious, big amount of adrenaline being dumped in the body. Yeah. So you want to regulate within this regulation. This is actually where the true magic, the true benefits of this contrast therapy journey lay, you know. Not like you're not wanting to hurt yourself. So more, longer is not always better. And also never ever, I have to have said this because otherwise I'm going to get Never, ever, ever do invigorating breath work in a bath, in an ice bath, especially not in cold water, in the sea, in any type of water, or in any situation where it can be dangerous to faint.
Okay.
Now, the reason why is that we are playing with the chemistry of oxygen and CO2 in the blood.
Yeah.
Now, as I said before, the breathing stimulus is comes from the level of CO2 within your blood, so the rising level of CO2 in your blood, because your brain is protecting you from not going into those very low levels of oxygen. However, with the breath work that we do tap into there.
Yeah.
And this is how we train our body to become more oxygen and energy efficient. But it's very important to take those safety measures extremely seriously, because obviously it's so simple to do, but there's so much happening on a physiological level. And there are obviously a few contraindications that need to be taken also seriously, which are epilepsy. It can induce an episode. Serious heart conditions. And with the cold, there's a little bit more, but there are a few things that need to be taken into account. It used to be said that pregnancy was also a contraindication. However, I know a lot of pregnant women who have done the breath work, but maybe on a little bit of a gentler level.
Okay. I mean, breath work is a huge part of preparing for labor, so...
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, I feel with pregnancy, like you can't do anything. Like it says it on any like supplement
scared,
that is, you can't do anything. I think it's like you need to kind of...
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Just go to bed and stay there. So in closing, I've got one final question, sort of as an outtake for anyone watching this to remember and hopefully implement in their own lives. From a breathwork perspective specifically, what is the one thing that you would suggest that the majority of people, not people that are advanced in breathwork already, start doing, and keep on repeating on a daily basis, just in terms of how people are approaching their breath and breathing?
Very good question. Let me think about that one for a second. What they need to stop doing.
Yes, what are most people kind of doing wrong in terms of the way that they are breathing on a daily basis? I would assume it's just not breathing deeply enough.
It's that shallow breathing, but I find it such a boring answer. So that's why I'm trying to think of something more creative. But it's the shallow breathing. Also, when we have chronic stress, that shallow breathing causes over breathing, which then again makes our body lazy. Because we are inherently lazy, and it trains the body not to become very efficient in creating energy and using oxygen. So shallow breathing, fast breathing, rapid breathing is what we also do. If you would shoot a gun next to my head, my immediate reaction is pulling my shoulders up. That's a stress response, and your breath starts going that thing. And what we are often also not doing, if that happens, because in daily life, we're not cushioned, we are exposed to stress. Things happen, and it can also be an emotion. What we are often not doing is the regulating after. And I think this is exactly what we need to do. So just simply placing your hands on your belly, taking a slow, deep breath in, allowing the belly to move forward, really blowing it up like a balloon, and then slowly... exhaling it out. You can also use the ujjayi breathing if that's more in your practice, or if you're a yogi and you feel that's more natural to you. You can also just do it through the nose if you feel like weird in a public location. I've lost the power of caring. As I told you before, I do this breath so often and people look at me like I'm losing it or if I'm dying. A little side note on that one also. If you start doing this breath, it might create some interesting reactions. That's what makes life interesting.
Exactly.
And I think what is so incredibly cool is that we can literally change our entire chemistry in our body. We can completely change the way our heart rate is going, the way we are producing hormones. If our bodies are clenching or opening, if our veins are closing or opening. And this, I think, is the coolest party trick we actually have up our sleeve, you know, yet we forget about it.
Totally.
And I think it's so cool that something so simple and so overlooked, and a lot of people find it so like, oh, airy fairy, and this is also like maybe think like that I should sit here in my little meditation cushion with my white shirt on. But it actually comes in handy in daily life, and I think by training ourselves, so by changing habits, creating new neural pathways, just by disrupting a behavior. So when we are in a stressful moment, to intentionally choose to use that remote control to our nervous system, the breath, by slowing it down, very simple, you will see that it helps. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer, you know, and that's also okay. But very often our brain gets a little bit impatient, and we want it to immediately work, but it's not like a tranquilizer. Like you need to keep going and slowing it down. But it is incredibly helpful with stress and anxiety. So I think slow, deep belly breathing. What is also important is nasal breathing when we sleep, and not through our mouth. So that is very important. And also playing around with retention and breath holds, because that trains our body to become more efficient.
Thank you so much for all of the information. I really appreciate it, and I really hope that this encourages more people to try and use their breath as a tool for regulation and for wellness and for feeling joy and for feeling calm and all of these good things, because a lot of the time people just automatically turn to something that they can take to try and fix everything, and sometimes we've actually got the answer already inside us. So thank you again, Kylie, for being here. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor being here.
Pleasure, my love. And you will see Kylie at the next Sunshine People. So
I can't wait. It is so magical. It is so magical.
And if you like this, tell all your friends, subscribe, share, like, etc., etc. Thank you so much for watching. If this episode shifted something with you, share it with someone who needs it. Because the wellness industry doesn't change from the top down. It changes through conversations like these. So like, subscribe, and stay close. We're not chasing wellness anymore. We're redefining it through joy. See you next week.